Welcome to Voices of Innovation. Today we're diving into something really important, how companies can truly create inclusive environments for everyone, regardless of age. We've got a fantastic story to unpack today from Semrush Agency, a digital-first creative firm known not just for groundbreaking campaigns, but also for, well, taking a hard look at its own internal culture. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest today, the HR director at Semrush Agency. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm genuinely excited to share our journey. It's something we're very passionate about at Semrush.
Great. So let's get right to it then. Before you started using Sagerise AI, what were some of the maybe underlying challenges you were noticing, specifically around your more experienced employees at Semrush Agency?
You know, it's interesting because on the surface, everything looked pretty good. We're seen as modern, forward thinking.
Right. The external image was strong.
Exactly. But when we really started looking closer, we noticed a subtle pattern. Our team members who were, let's say, a bit further along in their careers, they weren't engaging quite as much with some of the newer things.
What sort of things?
Well, like our mentorship programs, for instance,
Yeah.
or some of the newer upskilling opportunities we were rolling out. And it wasn't that they weren't interested, not at all. It felt more like a disconnect, maybe?
A disconnect. How so?
Perhaps they didn't quite see themselves reflected in the program offerings, or maybe they felt those opportunities weren't really aimed at them. And honestly, we didn't have a good way, a tool to really understand what was going on beneath the surface,
So it sounds like it wasn't really overt exclusion, not people actively being shut out, but more of an invisible wall, as you put it earlier.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that?
That's exactly it. An invisible wall. And it wasn't like anyone was intentionally saying, no, you can't participate. Definitely not. It was more about our systems, I think, and maybe even some unconscious assumptions we were all making.
Assumptions? Like what?
Well, for instance, when we rolled out training on, say, the latest social media trends, the default might have been to target our younger teams first. There might have been this sort of unspoken assumption that our senior folks were already set in their ways or perhaps didn't need it as much, which looking back is a dangerous assumption to make.
Right, because learning is continuous.
Exactly. And sometimes I think managers, even with the best intentions, might assume that someone who's been in the industry for a while is just less keen on learning a completely new technology.
Not malicious, but it has an impact.
Precisely. It's not malicious, but it can lead to those individuals not being offered the same opportunities. And then unfortunately, that can become a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's a really insightful point, the self-fulfilling prophecy aspect. So
Yeah.
how did Sagerise AI enter the picture? What made you think this could help with these sort of nuanced challenges?
Well, we knew we needed to move beyond just gut feelings and, surface level data. We needed something that could give us real insight, a deeper understanding of what was actually happening.
More than just standard HR metrics.
Much more. And Sagerise, for us, it became that lens. It wasn't just another piece of software. It really gave us a way to see the engagement patterns,
Right.
to identify where learning wasn't reaching everyone equally, and even to flag instances where the language being used in communications might unintentionally exclude certain groups.
Okay, so it gave you visibility. What were some of the key features that made a difference?
A few things really stood out. The personalized learning journeys were huge. It meant we could offer training that felt relevant to everyone, regardless of their career stage or their perceived skill set.
Tailored content.
Right. And the bias detection features helped us see those subtle patterns in our own communication and processes that we were blind to before. Plus, the age-inclusive mentorship matching was crucial, really helped break down some of those generational silos we were seeing.
And you mentioned an AI companion.
Yeah, that helped make it feel less like a top-down mandate and more like individual support, which was important for adoption. It really shifted us from just guessing about engagement to actually having data.
Moving from guessing to measuring.
Exactly. Measuring and then acting on those data-driven insights, that was the game changer.
That sounds like a pretty significant shift. Can you recall maybe a specific moment or perhaps an employee story where you really saw the impact of Sagerise AI firsthand, where it clicked?
Oh, absolutely. There's one person who comes to mind immediately. Let's call him Mark. He's a fantastic project lead, been with us for years, really solid performer. But before Sagerise, he was, steady, but he wasn't really engaging with any of the new learning stuff we offered. He sort of blended into the background in those areas, honestly.
Okay.
Then, after we implemented Sagerise, I remember looking at the platform one day, and I saw that Mark had completed over 10 learning modules in just a few months.
Wow, 10.
10. And he'd even earn a couple of new digital certifications through it. But what really struck me, what really hit home, was that he then re-enrolled in our mentorship program, but this time as a mentor.
As a mentor. That's fantastic.
Isn't it? And just last quarter, his peers actually voted him Team Mentor of the Month. It was just such a clear, tangible example. Here was someone whose desire to grow, to contribute more, had been there all along. We just hadn't provided the right pathways, or maybe we hadn't even seen it before Sagerise gave us that visibility.
That's a really powerful anecdote. It really brings it to life.
Yeah.
And what about the broader impact on the business itself? Can you share some of the more concrete results you've seen, the numbers?
Definitely. We looked closely at the first 6 months, and we saw some really encouraging numbers, actually. Cross-generational mentorship sessions, connecting different age groups, they increased by 47%.
27%. That's huge.
It was fantastic, exactly what we wanted to foster, and learning participation among our staff aged 45 and over, it doubled.
Doubled. Okay, that tells a story right there.
It really does. It told us that the personalized approach was genuinely resonating, that the interest was absolutely there. We also started using the bias reports Sagerise provided to analyze our internal communications.
Right, the language analysis.
Yes. And we saw a 30% drop in language flagged as potentially exclusionary.
That's significant progress on the inclusion front.
We thought so too. And perhaps most importantly, from a pure business perspective, we saw a 21% increase in productivity within projects led by our more senior team members.
21% productivity boost.
Yeah. It all just points to the fact that when people feel supported, when they feel engaged and seen, it directly impacts their performance. It's not just a nice to have.
It links inclusion directly to performance.
Absolutely. But honestly, beyond the numbers, which are great, there's been this real shift in how people feel. We've heard directly from employees who said they feel seen again, feel valued. The internal narrative, it's shifted. It's gone from maybe implicitly questioning the relevance or adaptability of some of our long-term employees to actively supporting and celebrating their continued growth. That, to me, is invaluable.
Absolutely. That sense of belonging, the feeling that your organization is genuinely invested in your growth, no matter your age. That's so critical, isn't it?
It really is.
So for other HR leaders who might be listening right now, and maybe they're recognizing some of these hidden barriers, these subtle patterns within their own organizations, what would be your key piece of advice?
My biggest piece of advice would be start by truly listening. And I don't just mean, sending out the annual engagement survey.
Going deeper than that.
Much deeper. Explore data-driven tools like Sagerise that can actually reveal the patterns you might not be seeing on the surface, the things happening between the lines. And crucially, challenge your own assumptions, your team's assumptions, about what your more experienced employees want or what they're capable of.
Don't assume they're winding down.
Exactly. Don't just assume someone isn't interested in learning new things simply because they've been in the workforce for a while. Our experience really hammered home this idea that growth doesn't have an expiration date. Growth doesn't retire.
Growth doesn't retire. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great takeaway. So looking ahead, what's next for Semrush Agency? How are you continuing to use Sagerise AI?
Oh, we're definitely continuing to deepen our integration. It's become quite core to our HR strategy now. We're currently rolling out specific leadership AI journeys through the platform aimed at all levels of management to embed inclusive practices.
Leadership training, okay.
Yes, and we're also piloting a reverse mentorship program, which I'm really excited about.
Reverse mentorship, how does that work?
It's where our younger employees mentor senior leaders, specifically on things like new digital technologies, emerging social trends, fostering that two-way learning.
That sounds fascinating.
We think it holds a lot of potential. And we're also integrating DEI progress reports, which are informed by the Sagerise data, directly into our executive dashboards.
Making it visible at the highest levels.
Exactly, so that these insights, this progress, it's always top of mind for leadership. For us, Sagerise has really become an integral part of our DNA, how we operate and how we foster that culture of continuous growth and true inclusion.
That's a really inspiring journey. Thank you so much for sharing such an insightful story with us today. It's been truly eye-opening.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And honestly, thank you to Sagerise, too, for giving us the tools to really unlock that limitless growth potential in our team.
And that's our deep dive for today. I think the key takeaway here is pretty clear. Making inclusion measurable, really getting underneath the surface, is often the crucial first step in breaking down those hidden barriers, like ageism, that can unintentionally hold people back. So if your organization is grappling with similar challenges, or perhaps if you're just looking for ways to get a clearer picture of your own inclusion efforts, maybe it's time to explore solutions that offer that deeper insight, like Sagerise AI. Until our next deep dive, keep those questions coming, stay curious, and keep innovating.